Now, before you hoy loads of precious money at the likes of Apple for their latest overpriced flagship smartphone, you might want to consider what you can get for around half the price. Because you might be surprised at the tasty tech stuffed inside some of the latest mid-range mobiles. The likes of Samsung, Motorola, OnePlus and Nothing all offer solid smartphone action for hundreds of pounds less than a flagship blower, complete with capable cameras, proper game and grunt, gorgeous OLED displays and plenty of unique features that you won't find on one of those bloody iPhones. Geeky anime wallpapers completely optional, of course. A splendid example of this is the rather fetching Pixel 8a, which is a fair chunk of change cheaper than Google's Pixel 8 flagship phone, but almost kind of just about as good. Sure, the Pixel 8a is made of cheaper stuff, but you wouldn't know it even if you copped a pretty hefty feel. In fact, I actually prefer the fingerprint-free finish of the budget model compared with the glossy muckfest of the regular Pixel 8. And it's just as pleasingly hand-friendly despite its admittedly chonkster bezels. The brains of this mini mid-ranger is that self-same Tensor G3 chipset that Google crammed into the 8 and the 8 Pro, complete with all those smart-ass AI-type shenanigans. And while it's not the beefiest of blowers, the Pixel 8a can still handle some serious Genshin impact, and mercifully rarely overheats. That 6.1-inch OLED screen is another 90Hz slice of eye pleasing heaven, while the stereo speaker setup ain't too shabby either. And the software side is just as satisfying, especially as Google is serving up 7 full years of OS and security updates with his bad boy, meaning the Pixel 8a has roughly the same lifespan as a male Panther chameleon. Nice. But as always, one of the highlights of this Google handset is the excellent camera tech. That hardware isn't quite as advanced as the flagships, but the top-notch image processing smarts means you'll get good-looking pics at almost any time of day. And even if your photo does look a bit crap, well, no worries. Those editing tools will rescue even the cackiest of snaps. And likewise, if you're tempted to spunk loads of cash Samsung's way for its latest Galaxy S24 or one of its even more pricier flagship siblings, well, stick that thick wad right back in your pants and briefly consider the Galaxy A55 instead. For a start, the A55's Gorilla Glass Victus and metal design looks and feels about as luxurious as those premium priced S24 efforts, with a nice selection of colours also on offer. And like the Pixel, this blower boasts IP67 dust and water resistance. That's good news for any slippery-fingered folk who've suffered that heart-rending experience of fumbling their smartphone and witness it plunging into a sink, a bath, or God forbid, a urinal midstream. The software shenanigans are similar on the Galaxy A55 too, including Samsung's many homebrew apps, as well as their useful as a chocolate condom Bigsby assistant. Just don't expect all of those AI smarts that you'll find crammed onto the S24 blowers. And Samsung has kindly promised Galaxy A55 owners that they can expect up to 5 years of security patching, so this phone is yet another keeper. That 6.6-inch 120Hz Super AMOLED screen has grown over last year's model, but it still pumps out sharp Full HD Plus images, complete with Samsung's trademark poppy colours, while it's also bright enough for comfortable outdoor use. You've got micro SD memory card support, got a bit of eSIM action, the works. And thankfully, despite being powered by yet another Samsung chipset, the Galaxy A55 serves up a reasonably judder-free everyday experience and doesn't absolutely drop a bollock when faced with intensive games like Genshin. Likewise, that big ol' 5000 mAh capacity battery can keep you going all day long, no worries as long as you don't absolutely rinse it with loads of camera action, etc. Although yeah, that 25-watt wide charging is typically slower than a deceased tortoise encased in concrete. And while the camera tech isn't as sturdy as the S24's, you'll still hopefully be happy with the Galaxy A55's pics and home movies, even if you don't get those same excellent editing tools that Google slaps on its Pixels. Alternatively, for a wee bit less cash, there's always the Samsung Galaxy A35. It's another water-resistant blower with a 120Hz AMOLED display, you got stereo speakers and some decent optics for the respectable asking price. Battery life is brilliant too, giving you stress-free all-day play, no worries. Performance sadly is a wee bit shaky at times, but if you're blessed with patience, unlike my good self, you should get on with it just fine. My full review of the Galaxy A35 is live right now. Alternatively, for a slightly cheaper price than the S24s, you could also grab yourself the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE, where the FE stands for f***ing Exynos, or at least it should do. It's not a bad blower by any means, but those Exynos brains means that it is a bit underpowered for the price. It's beaten into a pulpy mess by the phone I'm about to talk about in the performance department. There's definitely other options in this roundup that I far prefer, but if you see it at a discount, definitely check it out. Now, one of the more distinctive smartphones at this price range is the Nothing Phone 2A, which starts from just over 300 quid and again offers some decent specs to rival the Pixel. This slightly chunky smartphone sports a simplified glyph finish compared with the full-priced Nothing Phone 2, this time surrounding the rehoused camera hardware. But you still got that full notification support, the nifty countdown timer, and other literally flashy features. Sadly, there's no wireless charging support here, unlike the original Nothing Phone, but at least that battery life is easily good enough to last you a full day, even with proper intensive all-day use. That OLED screen is a delight, and the stereo speaker setup is not rubbish, so you can happily put your feet up and enjoy some video-type shenanigans or a bit of gaming on the go. Speaking of which, thanks to the custom MediaTek chipset which runs the show here, that Nothing Phone 2A is nippy enough to play any game out there, Genshin Impact included, even when you max out those graphics. Nothing's camera setup is suitably streamlined, so there's no pointless macro nonsense, etc. And it's decent enough to grab good looking pics and home movies, even in reasonably tested conditions. And Nothing OS is certainly grown on me. That black and white finish proves less distracting than regular Android, although of course the flashy glyph shenanigans more than makes up for that when you flip this bad boy over. And alternatively, if you do have a bit more cash to spunk on your shiny new blower, well, definitely check out the fully fledged Nothing Phone 2. The Nothing Phone 2 is powered by the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, which should mean smoother performance for longer, while the slightly larger battery combined with that energy efficient chipset means you'll get a wee bit longer out of every charge. You've got a bigger, brighter display, you've got an upgraded rear and front camera, and that glyph disco lighting has been redesigned with even more zones than before, plus some nifty new features. It's certainly a solid rival to the likes of the Pixel 7, and my full review is live right now. Now, Vivo phones are a bit tricky to get a hold of here in Blighty, but the Vivo V30 and V30 Pro are well worth rummaging around for, especially if you fancy some posh pants ultra slim design. Just maybe don't get this here colour, which kind of resembles my nana's bathroom tiles. Both Vivo blowers dish up a spacious 6.78-inch AMOLED screen with pin-sharp 1.5K resolution, plus HDR10 Plus support if you fancy some of that. Sadly, it is a mono speaker situation on these Vivos, but besides that, the V30s are cracking for watching your favourite bald retrobate wibbling on about tech. The regular model has a Snapdragon 7 Gen 3 stuffed inside, providing that performance, whereas the Pro model upgrades to MediaTek's Dimensity 8200. Both can happily cope with Genshin Impact, although only the Pro model doesn't destroy its Y-fronts when you chuck it onto the higher graphics. And despite those cooling layers, they'll both definitely warm your hands a bit. But no matter your choice, Vivo crams in a cracking selection of gaming tools. And both Vivo V30s have a respectably sized 5000 mAh capacity battery stuffed inside with very nippy 80 watt fast charging support, although sadly no wireless charging. You've got a 50 meg camera slapped on both, although the Pro upgrades from an OmniVision to a Sony sensor, complete with Zeiss branding. And regardless, both models will shoot decent looking family snaps, and both rock Vivo's fancy Aura Flash, which can be manually adjusted to make the tone warmer or colder. Now, if you want a fancy looking blower stashed in your shorts, but you don't want to pay premium prices, well, the Honor 90 is well worth a squint. It's a proper stunner with a curvy design that's also pleasingly tough. And it's good to see Honor offering 3 years of software updates here as well, although admittedly not everyone will get on with that Magic OS launcher. It's a wee bit bulky at times, and frankly it does occasionally get on my tits. Still, you've got loads of storage to make up for the lack of memory card support, while that 6.7-inch AMOLED screen is sharp, supremely bright and creamy smooth, topping off at 120Hz. Audio is less impressive, however, as the Honor 90 only serves up a single solitary speaker. But power is provided by an accelerated Snapdragon 7 Gen 1, which can capably cope with any game you chuck at it. A massive vapor chamber helps to keep the Honor 90 nice and cool when you're smashing 10 bells out of hairy hill goits in Genshin, And you've got yourself loads of gaming tools to make your violent virtual shenanigans even more enjoyable. Despite that slender frame, Honor has somehow managed to cram a 5000 mAh capacity battery inside of the Honor 90, so I found I never ran out of juice. Certainly had plenty left in the tank when I was clambering into my PJs at night time. And you got pretty nippy 66 watt wired recharging speeds as well, although admittedly no wireless recharging here. As for that 200 meg primary camera, well, it's not bad at all for everyday shots with decent HDR chops. Although photos can look a wee bit flat, and bright vibrant colours don't really pop the way that I really hoped they would, while softer lighting makes for quite grainy pics. If photography is a priority, you'll be better served by that Pixel for sure. Now, one of the best manufacturers out there when it comes to beefy hardware for not much dough is Xiaomi, so definitely check out its fresh new Redmi Note 13 Pro Plus. This is yet another beefy 6.67 incher, this time with a slightly curved screen as well as a leather style finish. And if you don't like this patchwork colour effort, you can grab the Note 13 Pro Plus in basic black or white as well. That frame may be constructed from plastic, but you got a tough bit of Gorilla Glass Victus for the front end, and this phone is IP68 water and dust resistant, so it can get very moist indeed, can even survive a quick tumble into a bubbly bath or a sink or whatever. Of course, not everyone will get on with the crapware-laden MIUI/HyperOS software, but at least you got 256 gigs of storage here. And that 6.67-inch OLED isn't just sharper than older models, it's also super bright. You got a MediaTek Dimensity 7200 Ultra running things with 12 gigs of that RAM stuff to help keep your apps and games running as well as possible. So Genshin Impact won't have this phone evacuating its metaphorical bowels. You've also got 120 watt battery charging here, so this thing powers up faster than it'll take you to scoff a bowl of shredded wheat. Although sadly, once again, no wireless charging support. And while the 200 megapixel primary camera might sound mightily impressive, don't expect anything special. It's a perfectly fine snapper for capturing precious memories and sharing them with absolute strangers on social media. Alternatively, for a few pun less, you can grab the Redmi Note 13 Pro 5G, which may lose the plus plaudits, but it's still a bit of a mid-range corker. It's not as water resistant and the battery charge is a bit slower, but the only other change is the chipset. That 7200 Ultra has been swapped out for Qualcomm's Snapdragon 7S Gen 2. Gamers will prefer the pricier Plus model for demanding fare like Genshin, but you can still give it a bloody good go on the Pro 5G, as long as you keep the graphics settings scaled down. And if you fancy livening up your afternoon with some sweat-inducing three-way action, well, I've compared the Redmi Note 13 Pro Plus, the Pro 5G, and the non-Pro models side by side right here on TechSpert. And if you've got a wee bit more cash to spunk out on your next blower, well, I would heartily recommend the Xiaomi 13T. This also looks proper smart with its fake leather finish, although there is a glass model if you don't really fancy it. And it's once again a water-resistant finish for those moist moments. The Xiaomi 13T also comes with a bit of added peace of mind with 5 years of security updates and 4 years of OS updates as well, plus that same generous 256 gigs of storage. That 6.67-inch AMOLED screen is similar to the Redmi's, but this time you got both HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision support. That peak brightness is higher, and the refresh scales all the way up to a creamy smooth 144Hz. Fantastic news for any gamers. Speaking of which, that performance is also a step up thanks to MediaTek's Dimensity 8200 Ultra, which is kept nice and cool thanks to Xiaomi's stainless steel vapor chamber shenanigans. However, when you drain that 5000 mAh capacity battery, you are refilling with comparably slower 67 watts so-called hypercharge. I mean, that's being rather facetious. It's still super fast compared with what you get on a Samsung, a Google, an Apple phone, which costs, twice as much. Although still bugger all wireless charging support here. And while that 50 meg main camera may sound like a bit of a downgrade, you do have some proper Leica processing smarts which help to produce sharp, detail-packed snaps at pretty much any time of day. Plus a very respectable feature-packed Pro mode and a 50 meg telephoto camera for getting a bit closer to the action. So overall, the Xiaomi 13T is a bit of a banger and well worth that mid-range asking price. Now, an alternative to Xiaomi that also offers most of the same advantages and disadvantages is Poco. The Poco blowers are essentially reskinned version of Xiaomi phones using very similar hardware and almost identical software. And this plucky pair, the Poco X6 and the Poco X6 Pro, might give you a slight hint of deja vu. They're yet more 6.67-inch hand fillers with 1.5K displays and stereo blasters, as well as the same size batteries, although that charger is locked at 67 watts for both. The Poco X6 once again rocks the Snapdragon 7S Gen 2, so go easy on that Genshin, while the Pro version this time has a Dimensity 8300 Ultra, some serious smarts for sure. As for the 64MP camera, well, this does pump out different photo results depending on which Poco is packed into your pants. Now you can see the results by checking out my Poco X6 versus Poco X6 Pro comparison, which is live right now on TechSpert and absolutely smashing if I do say so myself. And any gaming fans out there looking for a dependable mid-range device should have a proper squint at one of my favourites, the Poco F4 GT. This absolute unit is powered by Qualcomm's Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, which can blaze its way through any Android title out there. And when I say blaze, I mean it almost literally. That 8 Gen 1 does get a wee bit toasty when it's under duress, but thankfully Poco's coolant tech deals with that nicely. The gaming chops are further cemented by some very handy pop-up shoulder triggers, which can really take the pain out of more complex titles. Plus, the 4700mAh capacity battery means you can game for a good few hours on this Poco phone before you'll need to plug it back in, while the 120W charging support means you can power this bugger right back up to full in less time than it takes for James Corden to annoy the living piss out of me. Poco's 6.67-inch AMOLED display is a proper stunner, bold and bright with full Dolby Vision support, and compatible games can enjoy up to a 120Hz refresh rate for a fluid finish. There's also Dolby Atmos action with crisp audio spaffed out by the quad speaker arrangement. A pair of fresher mid-range options are the Poco F6 and the Poco F6 Pro, yet more 6.67-inch delights, although randomly the cheaper Poco F6 actually sports the more premium and just generally more attractive design of the pair. I don't know, personally I'm just getting sort of weird bathroom tiles sort of vibes from the F6 Pro. But anyway, with its latest smartphone, Xiaomi has been a bit more generous, shall we say, with its OS and security updates. The Poco F6 and the F6 Pro will enjoy 3 OS updates and 4 years of security patching. And as always, that hardware is top notch. You've got different camera tech on the F6 and the F6 Pro, with the result being brighter, bolder snaps spaffed out by that Pro model. But the F6 is still a decent wee everyday shooter, especially if you prefer more natural looking pics. Performance is fantastic too, despite the completely different chipsets powering this pair. Genshin Impact is a proper playable experience even on the higher graphics settings, with the usual excellent HyperOS gaming tools on offer. And that battery life is pretty decent, and even if you do find yourself running low on juice before the end of the day, both the F6 and the F6 Pro support super fast wired charging. Those OLED screens are absolute bangers too, especially on the Pro with its insanely crisp 1440p resolution. You've got impressive HDR video support, and brightness certainly isn't an issue even if you're residing in a country where the weather doesn't suck monkey nuts. So besides the usual grumbles about crapware and occasional wee bits of jank, the Poco F6 and the F6 Pro are well worth a squint if you're after top drawer specs and hardware at a price that won't cause even the stingiest of folk to foul their undercarriage. Now, I've reviewed an awful lot of mid-range smartphones here on TechSpert, a few of which I didn't manage to quite fit into this roundup, but a shout out to the likes of the Infinix Note 40 Pro Plus, another cracking phone with its eye-poppingly exuberant design and impressive specs, including a 100W fast charge battery, some beefy performance, and some typically batshit AI type shindiggery. It's a bit tricky to get a hold of, unfortunately, here in the UK, so it makes it a bit harder to recommend. Of course, Sony's just launched its fresh new Xperia 10 Mark VI, hoping to bring you a full review of that one soon, and the likes of the OnePlus Nord 4 will be launching in the coming month or so as well, so plenty more lingering just on the horizon. So if you want to be the first to see reviews of all these mid-range blowers, definitely do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Let us know your own favourite mid-range mobile if I missed them out of this roundup, and have yourselves a bloody wonderful rest of the week. I think I've mentioned everything else. Cheers everyone, love you!